Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the March installment of the Deliberative Dialogue series. My name is Cassie Haight, pronouns she, her, and I serve as the Director of Regional and Volunteer Engagement with the Pitt Alumni Association. We're proud to partner with the Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion for this discussion intended to support women throughout the variety of personal and professional roles we fill. We had an overwhelming response to this event today, and I think that speaks to the fact that finding balance has become even more challenging this past year. We hope that our discussions today can help answer your questions and point you towards resources for the future.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Carrie Benson. My pronouns are she and her, and I serve as the Sexual Violence Prevention and Education Coordinator here at Pitt. I'm so happy you've joined us today. The goal of this event is to help establish a community of Pitt women who can serve as a network of support while we continue to navigate and advocate. Today, we'll hear about the personal experiences from our 4 esteemed panelists, take questions from participants, and finally, we will move into breakout groups for smaller group conversation. Before we begin, just to go over a few housekeeping items. Please use the chat to submit questions, and while we may not have time to get to all of the questions today, we will do our best to follow up with answers in the future. Please keep your microphone muted during the presentation just to avoid any background noise. Feel free to have your camera on if that feels comfortable to you. Finally, I'm very excited to have Amy Phillip here with me today as my co-moderator. Amy is a senior sociology major who has spent much of her time at Pitt as a SAFE peer educator. SAFE stands for Sexual Assault Facilitation and Education. In this role, Amy works to combat harassment and sexual misconduct on campus through engaging her peers in deliberate dialogues. Soon, she will become an esteemed Pitt alumna. Thanks so much for being here, Amy. And now we're going to introduce the panelists for our presentation. The first panelist is Glory Durham. Glory completed her bachelor's degree in psychology at the University of Pittsburgh in 2011 and returned for her master's in infectious disease and microbiology in 2014. Since 2017, Glory has worked at the Penn Center for Health Devices and Technology at the University of Pennsylvania, serving first as the associate director and in the last year serving as acting director. In this role, her focus is on scaling a cross-disciplinary technology center that facilitates development and commercialization of solutions to solve unmet healthcare needs.
Our next panelist is Elif Yazigi. Elif Yazigi was born in Turkey and grew up in the United States. After receiving her education in computer and information sciences at the University of Pittsburgh, she went to work for Deloitte. Wanting to also experience life in her home country, Elif moved back to Turkey at the age of 22. She continued with her education by completing her master's degree in business information science at the University of Bosphorus. She is now leading the development of a Turkish audio app called Dinley. Elif is married and has an 8-month-old daughter named Daphne.
Our third panelist is Deborah Thomas. Deborah Thomas is the CEO of Deborah Thompson LLC and holds an adjunct faculty appointment at the University of Pittsburgh within the School of Nursing. Deborah has expertise in leadership development, patient safety, and quality improvement. Deborah has held a variety of administrative roles in both academic medical centers, community hospitals, and the Pittsburgh Regional Health Initiative.
Our final panelist is Cheryl Ruffin. Cheryl Ruffin is the Institutional Equity Manager with the University of Pittsburgh Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. Her responsibilities include completing the Affirmative Action Plan, ensuring compliance with OFFCP mandates, and developing and conducting diversity training. Cheryl has been a Pitt employee for more than 20 years. So welcome to all our panelists. Now that we've met them all, we're going to begin with questions. So our first question is for all of our panelists. And this is the question. Having people around you that can provide support is so important, both at home and in the workplace. Now, with a significant portion of jobs being remote, how do you find that support as you navigate challenges during the pandemic? Cheryl, would you be willing to start us off?
Yes, I will. Good afternoon, everyone. It's just such an honor to be here with all of you today and to engage in this way. One of the things I think is vitally important, I look at support internally and externally. And what I mean by that is what kind of support am I getting within the workplace? And then what other kind of support am I getting from my home and even from myself? So I think it's vitally important that you have leadership that understands the nuances of having a family life and having different things going on in your life. I think that it's vitally important to have supportive colleagues who are willing just to reach out on Teams and say, hey, how's it going? Just so you don't continue to feel isolated and feel completely alone. And for the leadership to understand, for example, I don't have small children at home anymore, but I am caring for elderly parents to understand that I may be at a different location so that we can make sure that we're getting everything done and trust that you're still doing the positive and complete work that you've been called to do. And so that's sort of like, I believe, the internal support that you need. Externally, one of the things that I had been doing and I think is vitally important is taking time for self-care. And self-care includes a lot of things. Self-care means that every now and then I would get out and go for a walk or go for a run in the morning to ensure that I was going outside, certainly masking, certainly social distancing, but taking that time just for me, listening to a podcast or some music that was inspiring so that when you start your day, you're starting it out absolutely motivated and you're getting a change of scenery a little bit. And then also spiritually, however you define that for yourselves, take that time to really connect spiritually with something so that you don't feel like you're totally disconnected from everything. And I think that if you have that support externally and internally, that you can certainly be successful in these difficult times.
I don't mind going next. So the pandemic has definitely been challenging. I actually think one of the more ironic benefits for me has been my growth in this specific area. I've learned to speak where I would have previously held back, exposing the imperfection of like not having everything together used to feel like admitting a point of failure. And now it just simply feels like asking for help. Everyone needs help at various points in their life, and the truth is no one is a mind reader. And allowing myself what I see as the luxury of vulnerability with people I trust increases their ability to provide the support that I need. So I make sure that I'm more vocal about communicating my bandwidth and my challenges. I make sure that if there's something that needs more time, I ask for more time instead of trying to do it, spend the night trying to get it all done for the sake of being perfect. It's not yet perfect, obviously, but it's very much improved than it was previously. Just the ability to say, hey, I need this help. I probably should have it all together, but I'm just going to say that I don't. And it would be great if I could have a second opinion or get your feedback on something that would really help clarify some of the challenges I'm having. And then just being receptive to that, whatever they have to give in terms of support.
And I definitely agree with what Cheryl and Glory has shared with us. And on a personal note, for me, being a mom, working full-time, and also trying to study, it's definitely been hard juggling everything. And as time went by, I've learned that the things that I used to do very efficiently, now I can't do because I have other responsibilities. But for me, the most important thing was trying to focus on what makes me feel good and what can contribute to my success. So I've sought help in regards to just getting a helper at home from 8 to 5 so that I can focus on things that are important to me, as well as taking care of my daughter, focusing on my studies and continuing my career. So I think it's always important to reflect back at yourself and learn your limitations, learn what you can handle and what you can't, and try to seek help when you need to.
I couldn't agree with more with all the previous panelists. The other thing, I've worked at home for a long time, and the thing that you have to learn to do is you have to set a schedule that you can get your work done and people know that you are working, whether it's a friend, a family member, that this is work time. And yes, that's an important need, but how do I manage it? The other thing is doing things that make it easier for you to work at home. For example, and not everybody has this luxury, but when you can, I have 2 computer screens. It makes it a lot easier for me to do my work. A printer that's a fax machine, a scanner, a copier, all in one. Nothing fancy, very inexpensive I'll give my Costco plug, but having those things and then knowing what else you need. For example, I've done some focus group work. I cannot transcribe anything. So where's your resource to help you with transcription? Building those resources so what you can do to deliver what you need. And who's your network of helping you grow? Do you have a skill set that you can trade with somebody for a skill set they have? Developing that network of peers that you get comfortable with it, because not everybody has a luxury of a big budget. So how can you barter and exchange and network? You know, one of the things that I think that I've learned in the pandemic is I always had a good network of friends, and that network of friends and family has really been a source of support when you can't go out. So networking is really a very valuable skill for keeping things in play at home.
Thanks so much, Deb, and thanks to all of our panelists. A lot of really great advice was shared, and I think it's such a great reminder to take some time for ourselves to think about what resources we need as individuals and what's helpful to us. We're going to ask another question for all of our panelists today. And that question is, can you share some advice about advocating for yourself in the workplace while still appearing to be a team player? And this is a question that was posed during our registration, so from one of our participants here today. And I'm going to ask Glory to get us started by responding to that particular question.
This is, so my answer to this is a little bit of a journey. So for me, leadership is definitely about being in service to yourself and others. So what I mean by that is I try to do my part every day to create a culture of advocacy, meaning, so I manage some staff. In my one-on-one meetings with my staff, I communicate my desire for mutual goal setting and for shared success specifically. I praise others in front of both senior leadership and my their coworkers, and I make sure to give credit. I also praise people and give credit in private by making sure that every email has language around gratitude. Every meeting ends with a thank you for spending time here. I know there's so much happening and I appreciate you taking time. So I meet with a lot of, I manage a portfolio, and yes, they're inventors inventing a technology, but they're also parents, people with lives and things going on. So just saying things like, thank you for the hour of your day that you took out to just catch me up on where your project is going. That is not something that's small to me. If I assign a stretch assignment to my staff based on what I perceive as their strengths, I try to be available to coach them through it and answer their questions in case I was wrong about their strengths, or there's a little bit of a challenge element for them and they just want a hand to hold in that process. So all in all, I try to make sure that I'm doing the work to create a safe space where people feel like they can flourish, they feel like they can express their opinion, they feel like they can give feedback without punishment. And then, so in a way, that's how I advocate for myself too, because sustaining that safe space is a mutual mutual responsibility, and I make sure that everyone in my company is aware of that. Like, this space I'm creating for your enjoyment also needs your help to sustain it. And that's where the team player element comes of it. We're all each other's team players, and hoping that they either take that initiative and carry forward, or they're just not part of a trusted circle, which is a shame, because you get more when there's more people partnering with you. As Deb said, when you have a dynamic team, you can do dynamic things.
Thank you so much, Glory. And thanks for not only talking about advocating for yourself, but also for advocating for the folks who are on your team as well. Cheryl, we're going to come to you next and ask the same question, which, just as a reminder, is, can you share advice about advocating for yourself in the workplace while still appearing to be a team player?
Yes, I thought about that question and recognized that I don't think it's not mutually exclusive. I think it's not either or, but both and. So we can certainly be a advocate for ourselves as we are demonstrating that we're a team player. We have to have the capacity to be able to express all of our strengths that we have, so that we can say what we can contribute to making the team stronger. And so if we're not willing to stand up and go, I can do that, that's within my bandwidth, that's where I'm really thrive, we will never be able to make the team strong, and we'll be missing an important piece, a part that we don't have because we're not speaking up. So it's a both and. I think by advocating for ourselves, we are demonstrating team play, because we're helping the team to come together and we're able to complete a task, and everyone is successful if we're able to just say that I am the person who's able to do that.
Thank you so much, Cheryl, for your response. Deb, same question.
One of the things that I want to stress is teamwork is an essential skill today in the work world. And team has switched from a noun to a verb, where we're teaming. And there's a certain set of skills which I think make you stand apart, but also make you a good team player. Because if we think about the work we have to do, particularly in the light of the pandemic, uncertainty abounds. There's a lot of chaos and change is fast, and you need teamwork. So to be a successful team member, you have to have good intrapersonal relationships. And the science shows at the meta-analytic level, so allow me to be a scientist here, that when you look at leadership development, what impacts organizational outcomes the most are leaders that have good intrapersonal skills and interpersonal skills. Some of the self-reflection that Gloria talked about, and Cheryl, of how do you know yourself? You have to have honest, direct, open communication, and you need to build trust and respect. And the other thing I think today is you have to recognize that conflict is normal. And what you need to do to be effective as a part of a team is learn to manage conflict. Conflict isn't resolved, but what do you bring to the table to help you be successful? And I couldn't agree more that you need to recognize people. And a very wise leader told me, one of the things that you should add to do, and it kind of builds on Glory's point about gratitude, make it on your to-do list. Give 3 sincere, meaningful compliments a day and smile. It really makes a difference for that group.
Thank you so much, Deb. I appreciate your comments on conflict and looking at it with a different lens, and sometimes the way that we have been socialized to think about and to view conflict. And finally, Ella, we'd like to get your thoughts on this particular question.
It's definitely a challenge, both advocating for yourself and also being a team player. As part of my profession, being a product manager, I have to do this as a profession. I have to deal with software engineers and designers and everyone in my group and try to produce a product out of 10 to 15 people. And sometimes that's a challenge. Like Deb said, conflict is normal and conflict happens every day. And as a leader, you sometimes have to say what's right or what's wrong depending on your level of expertise. So I've learned to speak out for myself, because in the beginning, at the beginning of my career, I always tried to agree. I tried to not create much more conflict than there was. And that's sometimes not helpful, neither for yourself or the group of people that you're working with. So it's important to be confident and believe in yourself and advocate for yourself. And the team will adhere to that. They will also understand where you're coming from.
Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone for your answers to that question. The next part of our panel discussion is going to be talking to our individual panelists who represent a diverse set of industries, have a diverse set of experiences within those industries, and Amy's going to get us started with that conversation.
Thanks, Carrie. So our first question is for Glory, and the question is, just starting out in a career can be challenging. Can you share how you've been able to find success, especially since you've been able to transition from public health to tech, two very different industries?
Don't let people underestimate the power of transferable skills. And what I mean by that is, beneath the job description is what I like to consider the actual base of the job duties. So my career in public health taught me basic communication skills, meaning that I had to develop scientific communications and health education materials. And because I was taking something like infectious diseases and making it digestible for people, I learned to speak normally, like speak in a way that people would be receptive of. And that was a very great transferable skill. My career in public health also gave me operational skills, in that I was in public health emergency preparedness, which is not timely to the current pandemic at all. But that was the field that I was in. So I was used to thinking ahead. I was used to having a year plan. I was used to creating workshops, because we had to, so the whole goal is we had a county plan for how we would treat emergencies. Everybody, there's fire, there's the school systems, there's multiple stakeholders. And so creating the workshops that they needed to all attend, thinking about what the year looked like, how we would report back to Harrisburg about what we were planning at a state level. All of those things were operational skills that I was learning, and stakeholder management skills as well. Then I moved to a position, HR position at QVC. At one point I moved to, it wasn't like subsequent, which exposed me to headcounts, budgets, onboarding people, offboarding people, just people management. I expanded a lot of those skills through Coursera or LinkedIn classes. I also learned most of Adobe, Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere Pro. I couldn't think of the video platform. I learned most of that on my own accord, just because I wanted to be an effective communicator. And so by the time I got to the position I'm in now, I knew how to do 70% of the job duties, which allowed me to grow into the 30% that I did not know. And so now when my director departed last year in July and made me the acting director, I knew 70% of what we were doing, and I had been growing over the 3 years into that 30% that I didn't know. So for me, it was a simple story of opportunity meeting preparation, and I really tried to be prepared for it. So just learning those transferable skills and then expanding them was really how I was able to make the jump.
Thanks so much, Glory. So much wonderful knowledge being shared in this space. Glory, we have a follow-up question for you. What is an effective way to get into a field of specialty without the usual experience requirements?
Oh, in the same way, I think like I always tell myself, like, I bet on myself. I've been fortunate, but I've also been prepared, tenacious, and something that's weird to say out loud, but generous with my time. If I'm interested in something, I volunteer in the area. So for example, I'm actually studying towards an MBA, but I have worked with so many startup companies because I work in tech. And so one of them actually is now in Silicon Valley. So with our support, they were able to close a Series A, move out to Silicon Valley. Yay, we're so excited for them. But I know now the CEO very personally, and I just simply asked, hey, would you be open to me shadowing you for a few months in the summer just to learn, like, what does it take to beyond Series A, what does managing a startup look like? How do you get into the FDA? Like, how do you get to that FDA clearance? Because I help my teams get to that Series A point, but I don't really know anything about after. So it'd just be great to learn. I talk to everyone to learn more information. I ask 1,000 questions minimum. I remind myself shyness is not an excuse to sabotage yourself. My motto has always been that a closed door has a back door or a window. I'll give this example that I always give, especially to new undergrads. There was a gap in my resume because I spent a year as a caregiver. I had an ill family member that ultimately passed that I cared for. Like, this could be seen as a detriment to a career plan. And at that time, I really had to come out of the tunnel of self-defeat that it created in my head. And at one point, I just wasn't finding the next job, and I didn't know what that would look like. And sorry, I'm getting emotional, geez. But I ultimately reached out through a temp agency because I just couldn't find a job. And I was like, you know what? Admit that you need some help finding these jobs. And so I stumbled actually into the University of Pennsylvania through that temp agency. And I got hired by a colleague within that was the department chair of an engineering department at the University of Pennsylvania. So he remembered me fully, and he was within a year of working under him. He believed in my potential. He enjoyed my work. And then he recommended me for the associate director position at my present center. So I think, I think being open to opportunity when it presents itself, and also experience doesn't always, you can showcase experience by volunteering as well. You can showcase experience by forming really strong relationships to where people will co-sign that they have instructed you in this manner. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be like, I worked at such and such place for such and such time, but having people that can speak on your behalf about your genuine curiosity for the subject matter and the ways that you extended your areas of expertise have been really how I maybe went through the back door or window to where I am now. So I hope that answered the question.
Thank you so much, Glory, for sharing parts of both your professional and personal journey with all of us today. The next question is for Deb. So over the course of the pandemic, we've seen a mass exodus of women from workplaces. Deb, can you provide any advice for women who want to return to the workforce after the pandemic?
Yeah. You have to think about, do I want to go back to the same work, or do I want to do a role change? Regardless of whether you want to do a change or go back to the same place, you have to do a self-analysis. What are my strengths? Where are my gaps? And then how are you going to close those gaps? Do you need to go back to school? Do you need to take a refresher? And Glory laid a beautiful foundation for all of those self-analytics of how you need to look into yourself. And then the most important thing, and it goes back to networking. How can I use the people around me? And you know, one of the things that is available to everybody at Pitt is Pitt Commons. And I'm going to share a story. I'm identified as the CEO. And you need to get comfortable with making cold calls. A person reached out to me who was starting their own consulting business and said, how do I build a client base and keep those client bases? Well, my style is I kind of remain under the radar, and I'm at a point in my career where I'm more interested in giving back than building a big business. So I do pretty much word of mouth. But I said to her, that's not my area of expertise, but I can connect you with two people who are. I advise a software startup company, and I put her in touch with the CEO there. And then there's a fellow Pitt alum that I met that I knew had an HR background that could give her guidance. But it's really looking at what do you need and how do you build up. And there's a lot of pathways, but it's diving into yourself, then setting a plan and setting goals for yourself. What do I need to do? What's the state of my resume? You know, we do have a career center at Pitt that people can go back to that has very good advice. So you need to think about those things, whether it's a career change or returning to a place of work.
Thanks so much, Deb. And I have a follow-up question for you as well. So many of us are working at home during the pandemic. And for some of us, it works out really well in terms of being able to allow us to caretake for children, for family members. There may be personal needs that are better addressed at home. Do you have any advice for folks who are listening in today who may want to continue working from home once the pandemic ends, and how to advocate for that?
Right. First of all, you have to know your organization. What's the culture like? Is the organization going to support working from home or not? Then you have to think about what outcomes am I responsible for? How much of my in-time presence is required in the office? How much time is required at home? Do I need to collaborate with certain groups? Don't I? Something that I think young careerists need to think about is being in the workplace setting with other people. Will that help my development and help me move forward? What kind of interactions? You know, I believe that as we get more adept at this, collaboration can be managed at home. So if you want to work at home, what's your plan? How can you show that you can meet organizational outcomes and deliver? And I think that's the case, and this is a trite phrase, but under promise and over deliver can be very helpful. You want to set yourself up regardless of whether you're at work or at home. They can count on you. But you also need to figure out, can you set boundaries? You know, having come in healthcare where frequently I was on call, well, you're on call, but then you're off call. And how do you turn that off so you have time for the wellness that was to take care of yourself? What are your cognitive limits? What skills are required? You know, the other thing to think about, did you like that time for commuting? Some people look at that commute time as a think time. They walked. What works for you? Are you a person that high quality social interactions are important? Think about that. And I think, you know, pay attention to the media. Just this morning in the paper, there was an article about how workers are thinking about, I apologize, I can't shut this phone off. How workplaces are thinking about integrating workers back at home. I think it's Facebook, Google, and one of the other big tech companies say they're going to do a 50-50 at home, and how workplaces are redesigning to make people feel safe with the pandemic, but have a plan and then practice it on a few people and know what your HR policies are if you're working for other people, and see what practice it. I'm a big believer, if you want to ask for something, sometimes it's good to practice. I can remember early in my career, sometimes I had to have very difficult conversations with people about performance. Trust me, I would practice at home in the mirror. As hokey as it sounds, you're more comfortable, and then it's simple. So those are my thoughts.
Thanks so much, Deb, for sharing your insight. Our next question is for Cheryl. With your background in diversity training and creating a more equitable workplace, can you share any tips for women seeking to advance in a more white and male workplace?
Certainly. I would say the first thing that's most important is that you know your own worth, that you understand exactly who you are. One of the things that Glory said, she defied all research. Typically, it says that women will not apply for a position unless they can do everything in the job description. However, men tend to, if they can do part of it, 50% of it, they will apply. So I appreciate that you defied all the research and you went on and applied for a job because you understood your worth. You understood those transferable skills. You understand what you're capable of doing. You go out and seek out how to fill in the gaps, and your volunteer work is vitally important. Prior to me taking this role, I did not have any direct support, but I also pastor a church where I had different people that came to me that I supported them. So that transferable skill gave me the supervisory skills that I needed to in order to take the job that I have now. So just really be aware of exactly who you are, what your worth is, and continue to stand on that. And as we talked about with advocating and team building, it's the same thing. Be willing to advocate for yourself. And then vitally important is that you should be an ally. Like if you see something happening in the workplace that's not working out for someone, despite their characteristics, whether it be male or female, just be an ally for others. That is another very important way to build up your confidence so that you're able to maintain in this particular space that we're in that happens to be predominantly white and male. A quote of Martin Luther King that's always support is injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So if there's any way that we can be an ally and make an inclusive place for where we are doing something profoundly different. And we're also giving ourselves the confidence that we need in order to know exactly who we are and exactly what our worth is.
Thank you so much, Cheryl, for that insight. Our last individual question is for Elif. This question is, I'm really excited to hear the answer, as I have a baby at the same age as Elif does. And so I'm interested in hearing from you about balance. What are the keys to successfully balancing your job, your responsibilities as a parent, and you're also in school right now. So tell us a little bit about how you've done this during the pandemic.
So I've learned to kind of create a plan for the week. So there's 7 days and there are 3 main things that I have to focus on. I'm comfortable in the sense that my work allows me to make choices as to how much time I need to spend on completing the work that I need to get done. So out of the 5 days, 3 days I focus on work. I'm online on Slack, Skype, so everyone can contact me from 8 to 5. But on the 2 days that I'm not online, either I've completed the work that I need to, or I'm doing it, but people can't reach me. I've told them, hey, Tuesdays and Thursdays, please don't call me. I have to finish project deadlines, but I can't meet you for 2 hours because I don't have the capacity. And thankfully my team has agreed on that plan, and they're okay as long as I am successful in what I need to get done. The 2 days that I'm offline at work, I focus on my studies. So for 2 to 3 hours at least, I'll look at any homework or any assignments that need to get done. And like I said previously, so I have a helper at home, which I'm thankful to have. And it's great because I'm at home and my helper is at home. So I'm able to communicate with my daughter during any breaks that I may have, or if I have like 20 minutes free time, I'll go to her playroom and I'll play with her. And honestly, I don't know what's going to happen after the pandemic. I'm not sure how I'll be able to juggle everything, because even though it's unfortunate that we're in this situation, it's actually, I don't want to take it for granted, because it's given me the chance to juggle everything. So I think in the future, I may have to focus on switching to more remote work, because I'm in the media sector and we have to go to work from 8 to 5. I was quite busy. So I think if they call me back in the office, I may have to just say, no, I'll look at more remote opportunities, because that's how I can juggle everything. And sometimes, you know, not everything's perfect, especially with my life. I definitely have breakdowns, but it's important to have a support system. My husband is very supportive. He's actually taking care of Daphne right now as I talk to you guys, which is something I'm thankful for. Also having friends and family members who have your back. If you're having a hard time, it's good to have a mom that'll listen to you for 2 to 3 hours, or friends that will come by for coffee. I think it's definitely important at a time like this year specifically to have that support mechanism.
Thank you so much for that insight and for all of the different tips and the things that have helped you to be successful during this time when you are juggling so much. A huge thank you to all of our panelists today for such a rich discussion.